Hi guys, this is TVB channel and today we'll be asking some random strangers if they know about Elizabeth Barrett Browning. Let's go guys! Excuse me, can I ask you some questions? Do you know about Elizabeth Barrett Browning? Excuse me, do you know about Elizabeth Barrett Browning? Do you know about Elizabeth Barrett Browning? Like what? Yes or no lang? Do you know about Elizabeth Barrett Browning? No. Thank you. Since all of those strangers didn't know about Elizabeth Barrett Browning, let's introduce her to them.
Hi, I am Elizabeth Barrett Browning. I was born on March 6, 1806. I am the oldest among the 12 children. My parents are Edward Barrett and Mary Graham Clark. I began writing poetry and reading books at the age of 4. And when I was 14 years old, my father secretly published a collection of my poetry and distributed it to my family. And my mother keeps almost all of my early works. Unfortunately, even if I am a very happy and talented child at the age of 15, I fell ill with a mysterious affliction that caused pain in my head and back, heart palpitations, and exhaustion. I thought that was the end of me. Some doctors were mystified, but many modern physicians suspected that I am suffering from hypokalemic periodic paralysis. It is a genetic condition that causes my potassium levels in the blood to drop, and I thought this suffering was temporary. Little did I know that I will carry it till I grow old. At the age of 20, Barrett offered to the public, with no indication of authorship, a slender volume entitled An Essay on Mind with Other Poems in 1826. Long afterwards, in a letter to an American critic, she called the book a girl's exercise. Nothing more nor less. Not at all known to the public, the poem for which the volume was named was a pretentious and frigid effort to survey in some 88 pages the history of science, philosophy, and poetry from ancient Greece to the present. The other 14 poems were occasional pieces or verses of a personal nature which did not yet display the author's authentic voice. Of the two journals which noticed the volume, one objected to its obscurity of language and its barren themes, and the other advised the poet to come down from the heights to look more closely at the nature. In 1840s, I was introduced in literary society to my cousin John Kenyon. My first adult collection was published in 1838, and I wrote prolifically between 1841 and 1844. Producing poetry, translation, and prose, I campaigned for the abolition of slavery, and my work helped influence reform in the child labor legislation. And because of writing, I met the love of my life, who inspired and motivated me to write my famous works. And someone will tell you the story about how me and Robert Browning, my husband, met.
In their work, the works of Elizabeth Barrett and Robert Browning were not just in praise of any love. They praised the pure, passionate love between the two of them, and the strong feelings that encouraged the two to fight for each other despite all the hardships in their lives. Their relationship began when Robert wrote a letter to Elizabeth admiring her poetry. The two continued writing letters to one another until they met for the very first time in summer of 1845. Theirs was a relationship that bloomed of respect and a friendship that was stronger than any other. Slowly, however, Robert's personality managed to sweep Elizabeth off her feet, but she couldn't allow her heart to give in so fast. Elizabeth's health had started deteriorating since she was a teenager, and she feared that her illness would get in the way of their relationship. Also, she knew her father would never accept a man like Robert in his life. However, she'd underestimated the power of Robert's feelings. Robert had fallen in an unparalleled love with Elizabeth, and with all her flaws, even when the two could no longer see each other, they kept their love fresh and burning with over 500 letters they wrote to each other. Finally, when the distance became too much to bear, and even when it seemed like it was the two of them against the world, they decided to tie the knot in secret. A week after their marriage, the two fled to Italy to start their new life together, away from everything that would get in the way of their relationship. Even though her marriage cost Elizabeth her relationship with her father, as he ultimately decided to disown her, it also marked the start of the happiest period in her life. Her health started improving, and she wrote some of her most famous works during this period in Italy. Moreover, a baby boy was born out of their marriage, blessing their days with happiness as the sound of his innocent laughter echoed in their house. Alas, Elizabeth's worst fear came true, and she lost her fight with her illness. In the summer of 1861, her soul left this world forever as Robert held her tender body in his arms. Robert was overcome by a deep sadness, and he decided to leave Italy, where painful memories outweighed the blissful ones, and return back to London with his only son. There, Robert occupied himself with writing and preparing the beautiful poems of his late wife for publication. A few years later, when Robert returned back to Italy on a vacation, he developed complications from a cold, and ultimately passed away. After 3 long decades, he'd finally joined his beloved wife in the afterlife, but even to this day, the couple's immense love for one another remains conserved in the form of poetry they recited for each other.
Since all of you now know who is Elizabeth Barrett Browning, let's now proceed to the analysis of her famous works. Let's start with the Sonnet 14 with the title, If Thou Must Love Me.
If thou must love me, let it be for naught, except for love's sake only. Do not say, I love her for her smile, her look, her way of speaking gently, for a trick of thought that falls in well with mine, and certes brought a sense of pleasant evermore thou ease on such a day, through love's for these eternity. Things in themselves, beloved, may be changed or changed for thee, and love so wrought for love's sake only. Do not say, I love her for her smile, her look, her way of speaking gently, for a trick of thought that falls in well with mine, and certes brought a sense of pleasant ease on such a day. For these things in themselves, beloved, may be changed or changed for thee, and love so wrought so. Neither love me for thine own dear pity's wiping my cheeks dry. A creature might forget to weep, who bore thy comfort long, and lose thy love thereby. But love me for love's sake.
Sonnet 14, entitled If Thou Must Love Me by Elizabeth Barrett Browning, is a Petrarchan or Italian sonnet composed of an octave, which is 2 groups of 4 lines, rhyming ABB, AA, BBA, and a sestet, which is 2 groups of 3 lines, rhyming CD, CD, CD. Unlike a Shakespearean sonnet, the Italian sonnet does not close with a couplet, but the second half of the poem gives a resolution to the first. In the case of this particular sonnet, Browning uses the second half of the sonnet to confirm the first, making it clear what her speaker desires. This sonnet is number 14 of a set of 44 and comes from Browning's most popular volume of poetry, the Sonnets from the Portuguese, first published in 1850. Sonnet 14 follows a pattern of a traditional Petrarchan sonnet and declares the speaker's intentions for how she is to be loved. The poem begins with the speaker declaring that she does not wish to be loved for any reason other than for love's own sake. She does not want her lover to love her for her smile or the way in which their thoughts are similar, as these things are liable to change over time. She would rather not be loved than to lose love later in life. The speaker hopes that her lover will love her simply because he does, as this love will not be unwrought by time. No matter how hard one works for love, if it is based on trite principles of the 17th century relationships, such as mannerisms and looks, it will not last forever. She desires a love that will last through eternity. In the line of the poem from 1 to 5, Browning begins this sonnet by making the request that will make up the basis of this poem. She asks for her potential lover, "If you are going to love me, don't let it be for any reason, other than the fact that you love me." She does not wish this unnamed lover to care for her for any reason that could be called trite or physical. She wants love for love's sake and no other. The speaker goes on to list the ways in which she does not want her lover to justify his love for her. These are all traditional reasons a man, especially one living during the early 1800s. As Elizabeth Barrett Browning was might state for feeling love, she does not care for them. Her speaker sees them as a being cliché, common, and stereotype. The speaker does not want to be defined by her looks or female charm. She concludes this stanza by stating that she does not want to be loved for any of these reasons, or just because of their thoughts which is fall in well together. It is not a reason to be loved simply because one's thoughts are similar to another. She adds to this statement as she transitions into the next line. In the lines 5 up to 9, the similarity of their thoughts, even though they search both a sense of pleasant ease or more simply assured of certainly both pleasure to their time together, is still not a reason to be loved as, she continues, they may change. Not only they may thoughts change, but so too might his opinion of her smile or the way of speaking gently. These are mutable factors of her life, and she knows that they are no basis on which to build a relationship. The speaker continues on to say that even if she changed for him, changed for thee, and work hard for the love so wrought, it still may be unwrought with the passage of time. If the two lovers do not find reasons to love one another rather than present day surface level pleasantries, then their love may be liable to change over time. The speaker would rather not to be loved than risk this in the future.
How do I love thee?
In the lines 9 to 14, the last lines of this sonnet conclude the speaker's ideas about love and restate their initial request. She also voices another reasons she does not wish to be loved for pity's sake, due to the fact that he has given her comfort in the past and she has heartily appreciated it. She knows that over time she might come to take that comfort for granted and forget the love it once engendered in her. This loss of recognition might make her lose her love for good. The last lines of the poem are a reiteration of her entire request. She wishes for her lover to love her for love's sake only, not anything else. This will ensure that thou mayst love on throughout all eternity. She believes that if only they can come to a place in which their love is based on love alone,
How do I love thee? Let me count the ways. I love thee to the depth and breadth and height my soul can reach. When feeling out of sight, for the ends of being, an ideal grace. I love thee to the level of every day's most quiet need, by sun and candlelight. I love thee freely, as men strive for right. I love thee purely, as they turn from praise. I love thee with a passion put to use in my old griefs and with my childhood's faith. I love thee with a love I seem to lose with my lost saints. I love thee with the breath, smiles, tears of all my life. And if God choose, I shall but love thee better after death.
How do I love thee? Let me count the ways. Or Sonnet 43 is one of Browning's most famous poems. She is a renowned Victorian poet who managed to achieve acclaim in her lifetime. She went on influence many British and American poets, particularly Emily Dickinson. Sonnet 43 by Elizabeth Barrett Browning describes the love that one speaker has for her husband. She confesses her ending passion. It is easily one of the most famous and recognizable poems in the English language. In the poem, the speaker is proclaiming her unending passion for her beloved. She tells her lover just how deeply her love goes, and she also tells him how she loves him. She loves him with all of her beings, and she hopes God will grant her the ability to love him even after she has passed. Browning engaged with themes of love, devotion, and relationships in Sonnet 43. From the first lines, it's clear that this is going to be a love poem. She addresses her listener, likely her husband Robert Browning, and tells him that there are many reasons why she loves him and that she's going to list them out. As the poems progress, the language becomes more figurative, with the poet making various nature-based comparisons in order to depict her love accurately and movingly. That comes into the poem at the end as the speaker talks about the length and durability of their relationship. She hopes that God will allow her to love her partner even in death. It becomes clear that at the end of her love is a spiritual one as much as it is a romantic one. Sonnet 43 is classified as a sonnet because it contains 14 lines of poetry and has a fixed rhyme scheme of ABBA, ABBA, CD, CD, CD. This is the traditional pattern of a Petrarchan sonnet. One of the two major sonnet forms. The other one is the Shakespearean sonnet with rhymes A, B, A, B, C, D, C, D, E, F, E, F, G, G. The poem also make use of the usual metrical pattern associated with standard sonnet forms, that is, iambic pentameter. This means that each line contains 5 sets of 2 beats. The first of these is unstressed and the second is stress. In Sonnet 43, Browning makes use of several literary devices. These include but are not limited to imagery, simile, and alliteration. The first of these is one of the most impactful literary devices that a poet can use. It can be seen through the poet's ability to create images that appeal to or activate the reader's sense. There are things that can be seen, touched, heard, or smelled in one's mind. A good example comes from these lines, I love thee to the level of the everyday's most quiet need by sun and candlelight. There is a great example of a simile in this line, which is, I love thee freely, as men strive for right. Here, She compares the amount that she loves her partner to the strength with which men strive for what is right or just. Alliteration is an effective device that used to increase the overall rhythm and rhyme of a piece of poetry. For example, purely and praise in line 8. When we talk about the speaker of Sonnet 43, one can assume, although it is not 100% certain, that Browning is also the speaker of the poem, since it is well known that how just deeply she and Robert Browning loved and cared for each other. The speaker is talking directly to her beloved in the sonnet. She uses personal pronouns such as I and you. 1. Based on the initial line, it appears that the speaker has been asked a question prior to reciting Sonnet 43. The first line also serves as the motivation for the rest of the work. When Barrett Browning writes, "How though I love thee, let me count the ways," she then uses the last 13 lines of the poem to show just how much she loves her husband. Lines 2 to 4 of Sonnet 43 provides the first way in which the speaker loves her husband when Barrett Browning writes, "I love thee to the depth and breadth and height my soul can reach when feeling out of sight, for the ends of being and ideal grace." Here, she is describing that her love is as deep and wide and tall as it can possibly be. It is so deep and wide and tall, in fact, that she cannot even see the edges of it. It is infinite. Barrett Browning uses consonants in line 2 in order to convey just how much she loves her husband. The repetition of the th or th sound gives the line movement, which signifies that her love for him is ongoing. In the next two lines, Barrett Browning continues to show her husband how much she loves him. She writes, "I love thee to the level of everydays, most quiet need by sun and candlelight." These lines are particularly lovely in their simplicity. While her love knows no bounds, the speaker also loves her beloved in ordinary, everyday life. She needs him as much as she needs other basic necessities of life. In lines 7 and 8, Barrett Browning writes of two other ways she loved. She writes, "I love thee freely, as men strive for right. I love thee purely, as they turn from praise." These lines of Sonnet 43 give an innate sense of feeling to her love. Just as men naturally strive to do what is good and right, she freely loves. In addition, she loves him purely, just as men turn from praise in order to maintain humility. The speaker does not want things or attention for her love, just like good and just men. She loves because it is what she has to do. Using these two similes in these two lines strengthens the tone of love and adoration in the poem. Barrett continued with a pattern of showing how much she loves her husband, as she writes in line 9 to 10, "I love thee with passion put to use, in my old griefs and with my childhood's faith." Barrett Browning diction here is interesting, particularly because she is taking the feelings she has about something relatively negative and comparing it to the feelings she has for her husband. Old griefs can be defined as anything that a person passionately despises. She is telling her husband here that she has much as passion for him as she those for those things in life that she just cannot stand. She also loves him with the faith of a child, which is a particularly lovely line. Children's faith is usually steadfast and true. Just like a child has faith, so too does the speaker have love for her husband. In the lines 11 to 13, Elizabeth continues to write with this religious motive in the next lines. She writes, I love thee with a love I seemed to lose. With my lost saints, I love thee with the breath, smiles, tears of all my life. Her lost saints is a reference to all of those people she once loved and adored in her life. The love she once felt for them, that she eventually lost, has now been transferred into the love she feels for her husband. Additionally, she loves him with all that she is, her breath, her smiles, and her tears. Barrett Browning confesses that she loves her husband with all that has made up her life. In continuation, in the lines 13 to 14, Barrett Browning ends her poem by acknowledging that she is willing to love her husband forever if God chooses to allow her to do so. She writes, and if God chose, I shall but love thee better after death. Not only will she love him well into eternity, she writes, but she will also love him even better than she does presently. Her love will continue to grow with the passing of time, regardless of whether or not she or he is still alive. The speaker's love for her husband is so strong that not even death could destroy it. In addition to this information from the Sonnet 43, Elizabeth Barrett Browning fell in love with Robert Browning after he reached out to her about her writing. The couple wrote letters back and forth to each other before finally marrying, knowing full well that the marriage would not be accepted by Barrett Browning's father. Their marriage was not only one filled with love but also respect for each other's writings. The two were each other's biggest supporters, and so it is no surprise that Barrett Browning would include this sonnet in her collection entitled Sonnets from the Portuguese.
Aurora lay, a literary novel in blank verse of Elizabeth Barrett Browning, and was published in 1857. The first person narrative, which comprised of 11,000 lines. This verse novel tells the story of a female writer balancing her love and her successful pursuit of a literary career. This novel is worth exploring as it provides an insight into the aspiration of women and encouraging women to take their place in the outside world by participating in professions usually regarded as masculine. The Cry of the Children by Elizabeth Barrett Browning is a moving poem that explores the terrors of child labor and those who suffer it. It was published in August 1843. Browning was inspired to write the poem after a report on the subject came out by the Royal Commission of Inquiry in Children's Employment. When this poem was published, the poem was an immediate success, and until today it has sometimes been critiqued for its sentimentality. The Cry of a Children is a passionate and evocative condemnation of the Victorian child labor system, which abounds with sentimental motifs, rhetoric, figurative conventions, and stylistic features. Sonnets from the Portuguese was written the year 1845 to 1846 and published first in 1850. It is a collection of 44 love sonnets written for Robert Browning, who had affectionately nicknamed Elizabeth Barrett Browning's Little Portuguese. It is worth exploring because it depicts the stages of the poet's developing romance.